So Peter gave a quick introduction who I am, but I'll quickly run through that. So I'm from Germany in Cologne, and I studied there mechanical engineering, but also electrical engineering. And then 3 years ago, I moved to Imperial College to London to pursue my PhD degree on the topics which Peter mentioned. But today I'm here to give you a bit my perspective, and I'm very delighted to be invited here to share my view on climate change, youth, innovation, and also new initiative which I'm kicking off at the moment. So what we have seen in 2019 is the youth is essentially leading the demonstrations on climate change. And that's really interesting to see what's going to happen at the moment. But the students who are there are school strikers. So they are from the schools going to the streets and claim and have these claims about their future, and they really care about that issue. My own generation is a little bit further in their own career trajectory. So I'm finishing my PhD, and many others are thinking about what's going to happen in the next 30 years. We have the UK target, the 2050 target of net zero. So that means that my own life, the next 30 years, will be essentially my career targeted in terms of making that a reality. And many of us are out there. So we are a little bit the connector between the two generations. So the generation, the school strikers who are on the streets, and then the generation who is at the moment the leaders and making decisions, which all impacts our next 30, 40 years. So this is a little bit where our generation comes into play. So, and then Peter was already mentioning that a little bit. We organized something which is a little bit more focused on something for our generation, for our students. So the story essentially started 10 years ago in 2009, where a Canadian student group had the idea of connecting students to discuss sustainable energy, the sustainable energy transition. So they cared about climate change, and their voice was not heard in political forums in the industry. So they wanted to gather together and network. That was the idea, 2009. And since then, the same event was repeated all over the world at different locations by different students' teams. And that's the International Student Energy Summit. And the whole purpose of doing that is to educate and enable the next generation to become the future leaders in the energy transition. That's the whole story. And since then, since 2009, this event was in Mexico, it was in Norway, it was in Indonesia, and now we had this in London at Imperial College. So my story ties into that because in 2017, a student group, including myself at Imperial, had the idea of bringing this over to Imperial. And this is where we proposed then a bid, which was later on considered to be successful, to be the next host of the International Student Energy Summit. And since then, we raised over £500,000 to bring also underrepresented students over to Imperial. And we had 100 countries represented. We had 650 students there, and it was a 3-day conference which really enabled others to understand the problems which we are facing in industry academia, but also think about solutions. So I have a few pictures here to give you some impressions how the conference went. So here we see, for example, a keynote speaker, Princess Abse from Burkina Faso, who gave her keynote to us. This was in the Royal Geographical Society, just next to our Imperial College, where all of our students then were gathered together. And we really discussed problems together. Students and academics, politicians, and engineers, really everyone. But we also discussed solutions, because as Mark was already mentioning, we want to make change. We want to start with solutions. So we teamed up in smaller teams, which we call an innovation jam, and we came up with some ideas. Our students were really interdisciplinary, were very from different backgrounds. That was a really fruitful discussion. And I think that's also at the heart of where we are heading with climate change, because climate change is a global issue, so we can only solve that together. So in fact, the innovation jam was the favorite part of the whole conference of the students, because it's solution-oriented. We can discuss many things, but we want to make a solution. And we were all united through a joint vision, which is moving to net zero. And that's really at the heart of it. And here you can see a picture, what we also achieved with our partners together. We had 20 partners, we invited 60 speakers, and then all together we had our gala dinner in the Natural History Museum in London, which is a fantastic place, and you can maybe imagine how it must be for a person from Africa to come to London the first time to first world country, and then dining onto a giant skeleton of a dinosaur. That is absolutely a mind-blowing experience for such a person from a developed country. And this kept me then afterwards thinking. So we had this conference in July, and then I thought, okay, how to keep that momentum going? We see that passion in youth on climate change. At the same time, innovation and solution-oriented, this innovation and solution-driven young people. So how do we use that, this passion on climate change to make impact now? And that was the core of looking into how innovation typically is happening. It can happen in an organization, a larger corporate, in R&D departments. You try to find problems which you need to solve. We have heard about that process this morning and yesterday as well in terms of digitalization, what problems are arising there. So that's inside an organization. Then there are accelerators and incubators which target on young teams where ideas brought forward to a corporate. And then at the same time, we have also universities, academics, where we have a lot of know-how, a lot of tech know-how, which is maybe a little bit more theoretical, but we can make that transition to innovation as well. So we have different forms of how innovation can happen. And if you want to innovate with millennials, then I think we need to focus on the key characteristics of millennials. And this is essentially where we start with the why. The impact and the purpose of what we want to do is very important for us. It may be not the monetary nature or any other reasons, but it's really about the impact which we would like to have. And how we would like to innovate, it's with peer groups, because this is essentially what we are seeing with the youth movement. Young people attract young people. This is like it's a passion-driven movement essentially. And I think an innovation that would be very beneficial. And then, of course, we have this deep connection now with climate change and digitalization. We grew up with smartphones, more or less. We are experiencing with internet, and we are really fast adapters of new technologies. So how to make all this happen in a productive manner, that's the main question. And this brings me to a new initiative, which I quickly want to run you through or pitch over here, which is the Climate Entrepreneurs Club. And the Climate Entrepreneurs Club is a bottom-up approach of innovation organized from students. So it really is an output also from the International Student Energy Summit. And the idea is to bring students across disciplines together in a single room and come up with solutions. Because what really unites us is climate change, right? And climate change can be anything. It's just an umbrella which we talk about. It is an umbrella if you are the one who is designing a new sustainable material or you make light bulbs, let's say, more efficient or whatever. That's all addressing the same problem, which is climate change, right? So that's like the umbrella, the same vision, the same passion which we share. At the same time, what young people want to do is entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is then the second is the second piece which we bring together. So young people care about climate change. Entrepreneurship is what young people want to do. So this is a bottom-up approach now, organized from students for students. At the moment, we are targeting postgraduate students at Imperial College, and we run that, and it's quite successful so far. We are launching this at the moment, and if you want to get involved in that, I'm really happy of discussing this to make that a success. We have next year COP26 in the UK. World is watching. So the question is, what can we do with these young people who are now passionate about? How far can we get in the next 12 months? Maybe there are a few startups ideas afterwards coming up from that. So I'm really happy if you have any suggestions, partner opportunities, please get in touch with me. If you are a student in this room and you think at your university you could do the same and start the same initiative, same announcement here, please reach out to me. I can tell you how you convince your university, how you talk to companies, and how you get students motivated to work on the same direction, which is addressing climate change. And this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much.